Welcome back to the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Gulseth.
It is Tuesday, April 2nd. You're like all pumped up now talking about hymnals.
I know. It's my favorite project. I need to collect all of them so I can have all of these hymnals in different languages. Even though I can't, I can't read them, but it's just so cool.
But then you could, when you meet people who speak those languages, you could share them with them.
I know. It's just, it's a great thing.
Meeting people.
I like meeting. Well, I'm an introvert, but I like meeting people.
Do you like my segue there?
Yeah, that was great.
Deaconess Heidi Goehmann, licensed clinical social worker and the author behind ILoveMyShepherd.com, all the good posts there and great resources for church workers and ministry families. Heidi, always a joy to talk with you. You got some great topics for us, good topic for us today.
Yeah. Hey, you guys, this is one of the, I think, most important topics that we could share around for worker wellness. I mean, there's like a million of them, right, that we could be talking about, but both for people serving in ministry. But, honestly, friendship, which we're talking about, is such a big deal for so many of us, and the loneliness that comes with seeking friends and maybe not having what we need this side of heaven, and just always seeking and seeking and seeking more of that relationship perfection that we need in Christ, around Christ. But just, I don't know. I see a lot of people that struggle with not finding the friends they need, the relationships they need in this life.
You used a key word there just a little bit ago that I think we should zero in on before we get too far into this. You used the word isolation. Is that something that you think many church workers face, especially pastors? I think I see that among pastors particularly, but what are your thoughts on isolation and church workers facing that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of weird dynamics at play that we don't quite understand yet. But some of them that we do understand is where unintentionally, and I think even subconsciously, people see church workers as a little bit holier. Like they're just a little bit holier, not like Jesus holier, but just a tiny bit holier, and that we all know that's not true. But at the same time, and you can cognitively know that's not true even as like a congregation member or a community member, but I think there's still a dynamic of that sometimes that comes out in ways we didn't intend, and sometimes ways that we just are misguided. And so that leads to some isolation. And like you said, especially of pastors, because unfortunately they represent Jesus to us. And
unfortunately,
well, I mean, I do think to some extent, because I think that's the work of the whole church. I mean, that all of us were intended to be, the hands and feet of Christ in this body on this earth. But they've been called to this special vocation. But at the same time, look, I just said that word, special vocation, as if it's more special than the other vocations. And so there's all this theology behind it, do you see, that we don't quite know what we think about it even. And so our pastor's a little bit more special. I mean, I don't think we believe that, but at the same time, we do believe that. So it's almost like a paradox, a duality that we ask them to exist in. And it's confusing and hard. And I think we have to kind of root through it in order for us to be able to get past that isolation and to build rich and meaningful friendships. The other thing that happens in the parish, another dynamic going on especially, is that eventually you'll get irritated with your pastor or angry with your pastor, or they'll do something in ministry that you don't like, because there's a lot of decisions to be made. There's a lot of spiritual guidance and caregiving to give that maybe the pastors weren't aware that you needed, and things like that. And so you can even have a friendship, and then there's kind of disruption in friendships that are a little bit different than, when you have a disruption of a friendship that is someone that just happens to be your neighbor. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think one of the key contributors to that isolation that you were describing there is that I don't necessarily want my pastor to know the real me, because in that relationship, we're dealing with, the chief thing we deal with is sin and forgiveness in that in his vocation. And so sometimes I try to hide that sin because I don't want him to think that I'm that sinful of a person.
Which
right?
is really ironic because that's
what it's all about.
Yeah, no, I think so. And it is weird. So in counseling, as a licensed professional therapist, we are taught this idea of dual relationships. Like, it's impossible for you to be friends with your client that you're treating, and that makes sense to us. And so I do think that maybe that exists, like, in the dynamics of, like, a pastor and their congregation members. But does it exist with, like, a pastor's wife and their congregation members? Does it exist with, our elders in the congregation? Okay, so there's a lot of weird dynamics going on. And the other thing is, the body of Christ is different than everything else in the world. And so is that dual relationship still going on with the pastor and congregation members? Or is it okay? Is it easier in some ways, even though we haven't figured out how, for pastors to have that kind of dual relationship of both pastor and friend to someone? I should certainly hope so, because of Jesus is the one who designed the body of Christ, not us. But we're figuring it out together. And I think we really need to set about the work of figuring it out together, because it's hard, and people do need friendships. And I think back in the day, there actually used to be, actual, like, classes in the seminary that told you, like, don't be friends with your congregation members. And now we know kind of better, because people are isolated, they are alone, and the body of Christ is supposed to be your support. I like to tell people that the body of Christ, I know I have a lot of words today, but that the body of Christ is a family. It is friendship, but more than that, it's a family. And so family actually looks a little bit different than friendship. And I think that's one of the dynamics we're dealing with too. There is going to be more some awkwardness and hardness and anger and frustration and forgiveness and sadness and all that in a family, because a family's a little bit closer knit, a little bit safer sometimes than friendship. And so, we just have to talk about those things.
Yeah, you mentioned something about it's not only the church workers, that also spills over to the church worker families and spouses, and the difficulties that like a pastor's wife can have finding friends in a new congregation, because there is that strange relationship of, well, I'm married to the pastor, but that's not my vocation. My vocation is pastor's wife, but what does that mean? And how do I find friends? And it can be very strange a space to be in. And also, as adults, when you move to a new place as an adult, it is really, like, nobody tells you this, it's really hard to find friends when you move to a new place, new congregation, new people. How do you go about being intentional about building these friendships?
Right. I mean, I recently was just doing a lot of research on friendship that I'll continue doing, but, I realized that it's a developmental task to make friends. It's an actual developmental task of not childhood, not adolescence, not teenage years, but of adulthood. So that means it's going to be a lot of work for us, like you said. And moving around in ministry and stuff just adds to that. More dynamics, And so that, coupled with that weirdness that is always involved when we talk about the vocation of pastor's wife. Like, it's the strangest vocation. I don't think we have our heads wrapped around it. And I'm honestly not sure we will this side of heaven, because, God doesn't always give us answers, and there's no right or wrong in particular. Like, every situation is different. So we just kind of continue to look to the word and pray and ask God, what do you want of me in this situation? And just, dear Lord, help me find some friends. Just trusting in the fact that he is faithful and he does answer our prayers. And I have, like, a blog on I Love My Shepherd that talks about Jonathan and his armor bearer. And I think it's 1 Samuel, the armor bearer says, like, I'm with you, heart and soul. And I can't tell you how many women in particular, but I do think that men feel this desire to have someone who's with them, heart and soul, and that's a good desire. God puts that in us, and he will be faithful to hear us. And I think sometimes his answer is not right now. There's a reason for some seasons of loneliness and isolation, and he'll work in them. But at the same time, it can be really discouraging. And I think that, that's why we have this conversation. And, you guys, we should do another, I think, coffee hour on, how do you go about finding some friends then? Because it's not just a skill you just know. I mean, I don't really believe in common sense anymore. And I think we just put people up to their own devices to go find friends. But are we ever taught how to make a friend?
Nope.
I don't think we are,
What are the key elements? We have like 2 minutes.
I know, there's so much more to talk about. I think we need a part 2 of this one.
I think our next one, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so add to that. Let's just add to that. Complicate it even more. And the older I get, the more introverted I tend to be.
Yep.
So let's add that to the mix too.
Yeah.
And it's really stepping outside that comfort zone to build friends, especially in a new area, in a new community or a new congregation, that sort of thing. And testing the waters to see if you can trust someone too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wonder if that's why Erickson actually identified that intimacy versus isolation is the task of especially like moving into midlife, because we are so naturally our affinity is to move toward isolation, and that's, I mean, I think, anything God develops, Satan will mess with and work on. And, so of course he's going to have his hand in that and trying to keep us isolated. That said, I think there is some skills and some discussion we can have around, what do extroverts kind of need and what do introverts kind of need? And what about those of us who are kind of both? and getting, I think you have to couple friendship and relationships with some self-care and boundaries and all of that. And so that is like an important, I think, thing to recognize about yourself. Like for you, forget even introverted, extroverted, just what are you looking for in a friend? What are the qualities that you need? What kind of needs do you see that you need them to meet? And what if that is really Jesus's job? And what is something a person can provide for you, and kind of meeting that out is really important, because I think so often one of the reasons we isolate is because people are disappointing us. And the reality is, maybe sometimes we're giving the weight to friendship that should be Jesus, our number one friend. And it sounds so cheesy to say, but I come back to it again. He is the friend of all friends.
Deaconess Heidi Goehmann, licensed clinical social worker, ilovemyshepherd.com, and we'll provide some links as well in the program notes with some more details on friendships and ministry. Thanks so much for being our guest today.
Thanks.
That does it for the Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit KFUO.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@KFUO.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.